Okay. And this class is about identity issues in the global world. And in this class, we are going to analyze the identity problems in various levels. So I will share my screen with you to talk about the course outline. Okay, now you can see the course outline for this lecture, for this course. And this will be a very interesting course in some respects because in today's world we perceive we perceive identity problems at every level, at the individual level, at the state level, at regional level, and at the global level. So this course will give us a chance to read different aspects of identity and discuss them. So I designed this course um, as a review of critical aspects of identity issues in the global world. In the seminars of this course, first of all, we will read these articles, and then we will explain and discuss multiple challenges to identity at the individual, national, and regional levels. Okay, so for this course, the students are responsible for reading the articles for each week. And as a result of this process, we will review these articles and we will talk about the problems stated in these articles. We will also talk about the students' opinions about these problems, and we will discuss these propositions. Okay, so in this course, there will be several subjects for discussion. First of all, this week we will make a brief introduction to the subject. We will briefly discuss the globalization, the concept of globalization upon the individual identity. The second issue we will discuss will be the evolving institutions and practice of European citizenship. We all know that European citizenship is not a very new concept. It was firstly introduced by the Maastricht Treaty. So starting from the 90s onwards, this question is on the agenda of the European Union. So we will discuss how the European citizenship has developed over the years and how the institutional aspects of the European Union helped the formation of this European citizenship. Okay, then we will discuss the metaphorical construction of a supranational identity. This is an important question to analyze because the identity is not only perceived at the individual level or at the national level, but when we are talking about the European Union, we perceive that, we find that there is also a supranational identity in construction at the EU level. So this identity encompasses different histories, traditions, cultures, and political cultures of the European countries, and we will analyze how such an identity is constructed. Okay, so in this context, we will refer to the theories of national identity. Certainly, we have to discuss the critical scholars who contributed to the literature with their writings on the construction of national identity. So here at this point we will discuss the ties that bind the peoples of Europe. These ties can be categorized or listed as the history, culture, constitution, institutions, and law. So we will analyze these points, these elements um, as the ties that bind the peoples of Europe under a European citizenship. After this discussion, we will move on to another question. This question will be if national identities are imagined communities, as Benedict Anderson supposes. So here we will refer to the academic work written by Benedict Anderson, and we will discuss if this work is viable or not. So here we will consider this question if and discuss if national identities are imagined communities or not. Then we will move on to another discussion. This will be the discourses on national culture. So in this context, we will analyze different discourses, political discourses, upon the construction or discussion of the national culture or representation of the national culture. Okay, so far we established a foundation for this course. We have seen critical elements about European citizenship, European identity, and also theories of identity construction. So, upon this foundation, we will move on to the discussion of the discourses, the national identity, a comparison of national identities and European identity. Here, we witness debates at the EU level that there are both national identities and the European identity in the European Union, and there are debates whether these two different identities exclude each other or if they are complementary to each other. So in this context, we will refer to different scholars and their work on these two different levels of identity. Okay. Here we will also refer to Eurobarometer surveys because Eurobarometer surveys regularly analyze what European people think on various aspects. So I will also ask students to make an active search on Eurobarometer statistics, and within this search, students will find if European citizens are feeling themselves more closely attached to their own national identity or to the newly constructed supranational European identity, or if the European citizens perceive these two identities as complementary to each other. So we will analyze these points by referring to the Eurobarometer surveys. Okay. After this discussion, we will move on to another one, and we will link the debate on identity with another policy area, that is economy. So we will discuss how economy is connected to democracy and identity in the European Union. This will be a new layer within this discussion because here we will take economy under consideration, and we will discuss the link between these two concepts at the EU level. Okay, then another very recent debate comes in, which is the immigration. Certainly, starting from the um, crisis within the Middle Eastern region, we perceive an increased wave of immigration, especially from the Middle Eastern countries towards Europe. And in this context, of course, identity issues are critical. Both sides perceive their identities under threat because of this immigration, and both sides have their own perceptions of this issue. So here we will discuss the fear of immigration in the mostly in the European Union, and we will discuss how the immigrants become part of the society as they move in, or maybe how they cannot become parts of those societies. So we will discuss these problems. Okay, another discussion question will be the nexus between globalization and ethnic identity. Here we will talk about the ethnic identities and how they are influenced by the globalization. As you all know, there are criticisms for globalization that it causes the ethnic identities to be erased or um, to vanish. So we will discuss if these criticisms still hold true for ethnic identities. Then we will move on to another discussion if globalization undermines national identities. This is a crucial question because it signifies the vulnerability of the national identities against the forces of globalization. So here we need to define globalization correctly, and we need to explain it correctly in order to understand its impact upon national identities. Okay, the next question. The next question will be the globalization and the crisis of cultural identity. In this context, we will refer to different cultural identities, different cultural values, and we will compare and contrast the global culture and its impact on local, individual, or regional, however you want to define it, different cultural identities. This will be a very interesting discussion. Then we will make another discussion on reflections of globalization on cultural identity. In this context, we will discuss the reflections of what's happening around the world at different contexts upon the cultural identities. Okay. Finally, we will talk about the challenges for the future. Here we will make some brainstorming, and here we will talk about um, what will be the future for national identities, for individual identities, for cultural and ethnic identities. And as we see, the force of globalization will continue, and we will discuss what will be the new challenges for the identity question. Okay, so this is our course outline, and in this course Because you are PhD students, you are responsible to read your articles before coming to classes, and you need to review these articles before the class, and therefore we will discuss these articles during our courses. So I want to ask all students to do their homeworks before our seminars, and we will carry out this course as a series of seminars. In these seminars, we will discuss these articles, which you will find on your Sanal Campus online system. So all articles are already uploaded to the system, and you can read your articles and you can review them before each week's class. Okay, so so let's make a brief introduction to this class. Let's talk about globalization. What is globalization? And let's talk about what are the impacts of globalization on individuals. Okay. So, as you perhaps read in other lectures, in other courses, globalization is defined as the increased diffusion of worldwide connections between people. This is the most obvious definition of globalization. So there are different aspects contributing to this increased diffusion of worldwide connections. So these are technological developments, improvement in communication technologies, improvement in travel, and also easy access to different people, different countries, and different cultures through internet and other communication lines. Okay, some technological progress in various domains, starting from information technologies to shipping, makes it possible for people to engage with each other. So all these technologies enable these interconnections between different countries, societies, and people. And these connections are taking place at an unprecedented speed. So this has never been perceived in the history that such connections are happening at this speed. So there's also another point that regardless of the distance separating these people, they can still communicate or interact in a very quick manner. So, depending on this definition, we can say that globalization entails compression of time and space. This process has several domains. Okay, let's look at the economic domain. So, in the economic domain, we see that international trade and capital movements are at historically unprecedented levels. So these connections, these movements are taking place so quickly that the international trade international trade and capital movements are taking place at a very high speed. Okay, let's look at the social domain. In the social domain, internet has made possible instant connections irrespective of distances. So this is obvious when you are using social media or when you are using email. to connect other people, you realize that you can instantly connect to the other parts of the world. Okay, in the cultural domain, more and more people access the same source of information or same forms of entertainment worldwide. So here we can talk about CNN, BBC channel for source of information, or for Twitter, Facebook as forms of connection, and music channels or Netflix or Amazon as forms of entertainment available worldwide. Okay, so we can see that all people from different parts of the world have an access to the same source of information or same forms of entertainment. Therefore, we find a growing awareness of the world as a whole. So here people start to perceive the world as a whole, and they perceive themselves as individuals acting as a piece of this whole. Okay, so here this perception defines the action of many people around the world. Okay, so we should say that the comprehensiveness of globalization is likely to restructure individuals' sense of self and their social identity. Okay, how is this possible? How can we explain this? Okay, so individuals may find their attachment to their local identities um, at a different perception vis-à-vis their attachment to their global communities. So, in this context, people may feel themselves more attached to either their local identities or maybe to the global identity. It may vary among different individuals. So here we can find more globalized individuals, and these people would feel more sense of belonging or attachment to a global identity or global culture. So here, these globalized individuals will be more significantly inclined to cooperate with global others because their sense of belonging or identity will be at the global level. Their actions will be uh, also uh, will be at the global level as well. So they will be inclined to cooperate with other people at global level. We can compare this with the less globalized individuals. Less globalized individuals would feel more sense of belonging to their local identity, to their local values, and these people would be less inclined to cooperate with the global other people. Okay, so here the same correlation also holds at the country level. The higher the aggregate level of globalization of a country will be, the higher the average levels of cooperation by their citizens. Okay, upon this explanation, we can say that development of a global social identity is positively associated with cooperation at the global level. Okay, this is a crucial explanation or understanding how globalized individuals cooperate with others at the global level. So, the higher the identification with the global community, the higher one's level of cooperation with global others. This is the obvious outcome of the sense of identity. So, in this context, we should ask two questions. First of all, what are the possible factors affecting global social identity? And secondly, does global social identity impact on the relationship between participation in globalization and propensity to cooperate? Okay, these are important questions to answer in this context. And in today's lecture, we will try to answer these questions. Okay, so we stated at the beginning of the lecture that participation in global networks reshapes individuals' social identity. How this um, reshaping, how this transition takes place. So this transition takes place by expanding the number and inclusiveness of groups to which individuals experience a sense of belonging and identification. Okay, so it is obvious that when an individual feels more a sense of belonging towards the globalized community, then his or her inclusiveness of groups will expand at the global level. So this person will feel more attachment to different groups at the global level. Okay, so in other words, we can explain that process of globalization expands the boundaries of the groups to which an individual attributes emotional and psychological attachment. This would be the consequence of the globalization of personal individual identity. Okay, so we can come to two logical conclusions from this discussion. Firstly, higher participation in global networks would lead to higher identification with the global community. Okay, this is the first logical consequence of this discussion. Secondly, social identity impacts on the relationship between participation in globalization and propensity to cooperate. This means that more globalized individuals cooperate more with global others than do the less globalized people. Okay, so in this context, we can explain that the development of a global we identity is a key element to address today's global problems. Here, let's give an example to this statement. We have the common environmental problems around the world. We have the common energy problems for which all states experience currently. So, for these energy problems, environmental problems, if there would be a development of a global we identity, if all individuals perceive themselves as a part of the whole at the global level, then it would be easier for people to address these global problems, to find solutions to these global problems. Okay, so um, up to this point, we discussed how we are going to um, study this course, the composing elements of this course, and we also uh, explained our expectations from the PhD students enrolled in this course. And here we also specified the questions we will raise during our lectures, and we said that the students are responsible to prepare their article reviews before each class, and we will hold discussions, debates on these questions based on these articles within the context of this course. Okay, and then we started briefly to the discussion of globalization, and we compared different levels of development of a global identity, a sense of belonging within individuals. And we compared and contrasted two different levels of refilling to different levels of globalized attachment in terms of their tendency to cooperate with other people. Okay, so now we are going to have a break, and in the next session, we will um, try to explain these subjects in a much more deeper level, and we will go into a deeper discussion upon this concept. Okay, so I suggest all students to read on this subject, and in the next lecture we will elaborate these questions. We will continue elaborating these questions. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me, and now I'm finishing this session. After the break, we will continue with the same subject.